Welcome back to another Behind the Pen. I'm JT Ellison with Jayne and Krentz, and we have been tasked with getting to know some of the booksellers from one of our absolute favorite stores, the Poison Pen in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can go to their website and check them out. But today we are joined with Patrick.
Hey, yes, second Patrick.
Patrick, Patrick King,
number
which we
two.
know as PK.
Usually PK, yep, exactly.
Yep, you are the second Patrick. We have two Patricks, and you've got a really fascinating background. I want to hear all about how you came to the pen, but you are the sci-fi fantasy specialist as well.
Yes, so I'm really lucky. I get to choose and purchase science fiction fantasy for the store. That's probably my main focus here. But I also get to do some of the children's, which is a lot of fun. Barbara and I both kind of do both of those areas because I did a lot of children's services back in the day for Phoenix Public Library. I order some of the teen. John Charles and I sort of co-hit the teen area. I tend to do the fantasy and horror, some of the mystery. John Charles really knows his teen romance, so that's really cool. And then classics, nonfiction, just sort of whatever is kind of coming through. Sometimes I'll order for those as well. But yeah, I'm really lucky. It's so funny because I started off as a page at Phoenix Public Library, and I worked with a lady named Patricia. And Patricia is still just one of the most wonderful people in the world. And she's the one who introduced me to the Poison Pen. She actually worked at the store at the time, part-time. And they were moving stores from across from Molly's on Main off of Main Street over to the store that we're in now off of First Avenue and Goldwater. And so she said, we need just some extra bodies to help carry books. And so basically like a chain gang, we went down from Main Street to the store and we were just moving boxes, and it was just a lot of fun. And so over time, as I went through college and did other things, I was just sort of kind of that on-call sort of person that Barbara would call up if somebody was on vacation, we needed an extra body. I was just sort of that extra fill-in help as needed, and I was always glad for the extra money to do that. And right around probably 2004, I came on full-time, well, not full-time, but full staff with the pen. I had graduated college. I was getting my master's degree. Master's degrees are really expensive. And I was getting it in library and information sciences with a specialty in medical informatics. And I was doing it through the University of North Texas, and that was a really interesting and fun experience as well. But so I was working here, I was working at the public library, and then I was getting my master's because, we were right at that cusp of the Great Recession. Full-time jobs were really, really hard to come by. And so I decided, hey, if I work two jobs, that's as good as one. And I really enjoy working at the bookstore, and so that's sort of where I ended up coming in full-time, or not full-time, but part-time, nearly full-time during that time period. And then, after I got my master's degree and everything, I got a full-time job, then I ended up cutting down to a part-time position here at the store. But I'm probably here way more than I really should be. I mean, I absolutely
That's love, right?
Got the best customers in the world. It's so much fun to talk with people each and every day, kind of help out with their problems. I get to read books. I get free books. I mean, as a book junkie, that is just wonderful. And I'm so grateful to Patricia for introducing me to the store years and years ago. So.
How did you end up in charge of the fantasy and sci-fi shelves?
It's sort of ipso facto. I was the only one interested in it. So I've always loved science fiction. I've always loved fantasy. I'm probably a bigger fantasy reader, or at least back in the day I was. I think I do a lot more harder science fiction now. I've discovered that I really enjoy some things. But yeah, I had that love. I curate. I love doing book talks with people, and of course, I think the younger generations probably are reading more fantasy right now than mystery, and so it's sort of important to have kind of a mix. And we had a lack of not interest here at the store. I think everybody loves books, and but somebody who's really specialized in it. So I decided, hey, if I'm going to focus on something, that'll be my focus right here. So, and that's a lot of fun. As a librarian, Jayne, I know you're a former librarian yourself. I mean, we read everything. Absolutely read everything and love everything. I read every genre, but I really love science fiction and fantasy. I think that it's sort of an unrepresented or unappreciated genre sometimes.
Well, that brings us to the next question that JT and I were talking about what we wanted to cover. And you and JT both have a lot more background in that genre than I do. I grew up on the early Robert Heinlein, the fun stuff, and Andre Norton. And it's literally been decades. When I look at it now, it's a whole new world out there for fantasy and science fiction. And I'm particularly interested in how it's divided into so many subgenres. When buyers come in, how do they choose their book if they know what they're going for? How does it work?
That's become, in the last few years, that's become the biggest challenge. Now, I grew up on David Eddings, who I absolutely love, Raymond Feist, who I have right back behind me here on the shelf, which was always, the farm boy or the underrepresented boy who ends up becoming very powerful superhero style, goes on the quest, slays the god or the big bad, or finds the thing that he needs to find. And that was sort of, fantasy at the time, especially in the early 90s when I was reading and just sort of uncovering fantasy. And, in terms of hard science fiction, you had your Star Trek books, which I enjoyed reading, and the Star Wars books like Michael Stackpole's X-Wing, a local writer. And so that was sort of my introduction to science fiction. Then, of course, Marion Zimmer Bradley with her Darkover series, and Piers Anthony with his, On a Pale Horse. I'm blanking on the name of that series at the moment. The Incarnations of Immortality. I mean, so there were science fiction writers, but now it's just sort of exploded. I mean, you can have hard science fiction with mystery. I read one called Medusa Uploaded by Emily Davenport. That is a really great science fiction novel with a serial killer robot. You have Martha Wells with the Murder Bots, James Corey, which is a cross between spy espionage, police procedural, and hard science fiction. You've got Neil Stevenson with like Seven Eves right behind me. That's really almost climate fiction, but with a really interesting, just mathematical and scientific twist to it. John Scalzi with Kaiju Preservation Society, which is just really fun. It's alternate Earth meets, Jurassic Park meets another great adventure. I mean, it was really a lot of fun. And then you've got an explosion in fantasy as well. I mean, you've got a lot of books that are focusing on social issues. You're getting a lot of representation of minority groups within fantasy itself. You get your mystery slash urban fantasies. You get your it's just endless. You get your grimdarks. Grimdark is still really popular thanks to Game of Thrones. You get just your standard fantasies, and you even get science fiction that has elements of fantasy within it, like Becky Chambers' Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is really just a lovely, cozy book about a group of travelers who are traveling from point A to point B. You know, you could classify it almost as fantasy, but you could also classify it as Lake Wobegon Days in Space. I mean,
well, that's really interesting, and I hadn't thought about it, but it really is more of an umbrella category, like YA. YA is such a huge umbrella. There's 1,000 different subgenres within YA that it qualifies for, and sci-fi and fantasy has really kind of become that.
And it becomes really challenging to order because how much, you know, what's popular in terms of trending, I need to have that on the shelf. I also need to have the classics. I need to have representation from Stephen King. I need to have representation of Heinlein and Philip K. Dick and these classics, because I get a lot of people who are wanting to read those classics as well. So, you know, it's sort of a juggling act of what's hot, what's not, what's good out there. I tend to order what I like, or what I end up hearing a lot of people, my friends and you know, my science fiction book club group that are really gravitating towards. So I sort of, you know, I try to listen to the community as much as possible to try to figure out those areas that I'm weak in, where I can order for the bookstore and make sure. And if I am weak in that area, you know, what can I read to kind of educate myself on a new genre? And
Right.
I found some really wonderful books out there because of it.
What happened with the one that startled me the most, that I didn't expect to be as strong, subgenre expect to be as strong as long as it was. Of course, I'm the one who, after was it Thomas Harris wrote that serial killer book, The Red Dragon? I'm the one who said, who's never going to want to read books like that? But I have been, over the years, I was surprised at the strength of the apocalyptic story.
Yes.
And who reads that? Is that a younger person's story?
Yeah, no.
A young person like JT would read this story.
I'm not young.
You know, it's interesting because I really, I mean, Emily St. John Mandel, you know, with Station 11 is probably one of the, I mean, that is one of the most powerful books that you're ever going to read. We maybe classify it as science fiction. It's in some ways, it often gets lumped into literary because, you know, science fiction is sort of that kind of genre. That sometimes you, just like romance, right? Romance gets a bad rap because occasionally, you know, you get some authors who write pulp and there's pulp science fiction, but there's really wonderful literary science fiction out there. And I think that a lot of literary writers sort of glommed onto the apocalyptic fiction as an element to describe what possible futures could be. You know, you can discuss things like climate change very easily and the risks of climate change. You can discuss, you know, just social issues really well. And
pandemics,
exactly. I mean, it's a great way to bring in that science without, you know, forcing you to read a you know, 500 page or, you know, 30
a white paper.
exactly. So it's really you know, it's a great way to introduce people to those subjects, and also it's a great dynamic to get people going back and forth with each other. And I think that that's part of the fun of apocalyptic fiction. JT, do you agree? Do you feel like, you know, that dynamic between characters is
Oh, sure.
really strong?
I've read sci-fi since I was a kid. My dad's a huge sci-fi, and he's a space sci-fi guy. So he's kind of a purist, right? I always see him, you know, when I'm looking for books for him, it's like, okay, is there a space element to this? Because I feel like the sci-fi writers are the futurists, right? They're the social commentary. They're the warning system of, hey, if y'all don't stop doing this, look what's going to happen. Right? They take what we're experiencing and spin it out into this what could happen. And I think that's what attracts me the most to it, is this, there but for the grace of God go I, and us and our society. And we have to hang all of this on one person's shoulders, who has to be the one who steps out of the cave and is going to be the brave one to try to change the world. And that's, gosh, this is my jam. This theme is my jam, right? The unlikely hero, the regular person who suddenly has to become powerful and a leader and all of that. That's my jam. And sci-fi and fantasy is just rife with it, which is great.
It really is. And I think especially fantasy, I really love that aspect of the hero born, right? I mean, we get it in Star Wars, we get it in a lot of our classic movies as well. The one person that is destined or is something special but doesn't realize that they are. And then they have to develop and go through this story arc of going from being the regular person to being the hero. Not always the savior, sometimes they're able to, I always think that good fantasy has a good cast of characters that you're going to surround people with. And I really like science fiction that does that as well. Because as much as I love Superman can get a little boring. There's that anime that's that came out not too long ago called One Punch Man. And One Punch Man literally takes out every enemy with one punch. And so, of course, how does he get to that one punch is sort of the joke with it. But you sort of feel that way with Superman. You've got to kind of calm the character down, and you've got to kind of create these especially a good fantasy writer will make sure to pull back what their characters can or can't do, so that way they don't become too powerful. I think Raymond Feist, unfortunately, it ran away with him a little bit towards the end of one of his series that he's done. But I mean, I think that they're a lot of fun. They're still really charming. I really, really like Mary Robinette Kowal's Lady Astronaut series. And if anybody has a chance to read these are really a lot of fun. Basically, it's 1950s, a meteor is coming down to Earth, and that we have to try to figure out how to solve the issue of climate change and getting off of Earth and recreating society. And how do we take a society which has marginalized women and realize that, hey, we've got some really smart women here, and bring them into the fold. And so we've kind of got this hidden figures element to solving this climate change and getting people off the Earth safely. And she creates some really great characters. And if you get the chance to read her or listen to her books, she does the entire narration, and she is a great reader. So she's an actress by trade, and you can really tell when she does the narration for her own books. She really gets a great idea of her voice.
That is so awesome. So let's talk about the store too. When somebody comes in, so you're there on Saturdays and you're filling in. So somebody comes in and says, I want a cool sci-fi fantasy novel, and they point to PK and say, go over there, he'll hook you up. What's your favorite book to push on a reader?
It depends on the person. So reader's advisory, which is something you learn in library school and just practicing, the fact of the matter is that I can absolutely love a book and it's not going to be your book. And honestly, I mean, I have favorite books based off of what I've read throughout. So I have a good repertoire of what to recommend, but I don't want to push James S.A. Corey if you have no interest in spy and espionage thrillers. So really the idea is I want to listen to you and hear what you have to say of what you like to read. Are you more of a literary reader? So are you somebody who wants to try some science fiction and isn't really quite sure where to go, but maybe you enjoy authors like Cormac McCarthy or James Michener or something like that? And I can really listen in to understand what your what you would really like when you sit down. So maybe somebody like Kim Stanley Robinson with The Years of Rice and Salt, or Aurora, which is one of my all-time favorite sort of literary novels with the ship that's an unreliable narrator. I think that that's really a really cool idea. Or Emily St. John Mandel's Station 11, if they haven't read that. So I like to sort of listen to what each person has to say and get an idea of what they like to read before I recommend a book. I mean, to me, there's favorites. Now, for right now, just kind of as an everybody book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig is probably one of those books that I've really been pushing. I felt like it was really a charming novel. You know, what you do at the end of the life, your different possibilities of where you could go and your different alternate realities. And it's really a book that has a lot of meaning behind it, a lot of, and you need some tissues towards the end of the book. I mean, if you need that good cathartic, I mean, I usually don't cry when I read it, and that one broke me down a little bit.
What do you see trending now across the wave of science fiction and fantasy? Are you seeing anything new? Maybe we should divide this into like the fantasy stuff and the more hardcore science fiction. What do you see coming up in the right. Fantasy side?
Actually, for both genres, I see a lot of representation of marginalized groups. So you're getting authors who are LGBTQ plus. You're getting a lot of authors who are focusing a lot on characters. Within that, you're seeing also in African American authors that are getting published and are getting published and getting a lot of attention right now. And I think that that's really important. I think that they've been left out of the discussion, you know, especially during the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I think that has really changed and updated. And so.
And Kay Jemison.
And Kay Jemison, exactly.
Oh my God. I mean, also aside, she has a master class.
Yes, she does.
Astounding.
Yeah.
I actually had to stop watching because I'm like, she's giving me too many ideas and I have to focus and get this done. And then I'm coming back to it because, I mean, wow, talk about world building.
Exactly. There's so much going on. I'm surprised. I apparently scheduled this when John Charles has a discussion with Frank Anthony Polito in 5 minutes. And he's standing right by the door. John, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that we had a book club discussion, our book discussion.
Oh, so we've got a hard 5 minute out. Is that what you're saying?
We've got a hard 5 minute out so he can get to discussing with Frank Anthony here. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Then what do you think? One last question, Jayne. Who is the author that when they put a book out, you absolutely, that's it, you're salivating, you're there?
Oh gosh. Neil Stevenson, probably. He's amazing. I think he's an incredible writer. He has great characters. I get into the nerdy math and science that he writes 7, 8, 9, 10 pages on. I think he's a fantastic writer. And I try to read everything that he has written. And I discovered him like 3 years ago. And so really? I've been going through his entire backlist and I've really been enjoying them, which I'm sort of surprised. I didn't think that I was going to fall in love with him as much as I possibly would.
No, he's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. There's a lot, for those watching, there's lots of names and lots of books out there to explore.
Exactly. Some of my favorites right behind me. So definitely books to check out. One non-science fiction book, White Teeth, Zadie Smith. I really love that book. If anybody gets the chance to read it, 1970s London, it's just super cool. Awesome. She's got a great voice.
And if we want book recommendations in the sci-fi fantasy realm, how can we get in touch with you to get them?
Absolutely. Email me, pat@poisonpen.com. That's because we have a Patrick at poisonpen.com. So email me, Pat. If you do email Patrick, he'll forward it on over to me. Come on into the store, give me a call. Our phone number is 480-947-2974. I'm usually in Wednesday and Thursday nights. Event nights are a little difficult for me to do a lot of book recommendations, but if you need some recs, you can always check out my staff picks. I try to list out a lot of the great science fiction fantasy that's coming out each and every month. And there's some really great books that are coming out this month, especially probably a shout out to probably my favorite book of the year so far, which is the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. That is probably one of the most entertaining books that you are going to read this year. It's got everything: adventure, good science, and it is entertaining. And you can just tell when an author really loves what they're writing, and you can tell with him.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This is
no problem. I'm sorry about a short interview, but thank you too as well. What an honor.
Well, I think we got a lot in, and good luck for John Charles. Have a fun book club conversation, and maybe we could do this again, because I don't even think we scratched the surface of this genre.
Absolutely. We'll do another talk. No problem there.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.